All right, hey guys, me Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark, joined by Joe Perticone, author of Press Pass and denizen of Capitol Hill. You see him there in the rotunda. That's Russell, right?
No, Cannon, house side.
That's what I meant. Cannon, definitely. We're talking because Joe's been on the Hill today, taking in the fracas over the Jeffrey Epstein files. There has been a lot of back and forth at the White House too, frankly. But Joe, can you walk us through the state of play?
So this morning was when Thomas Massie and Ro-Khanna unveiled their discharge petition based on their resolution from earlier in July, which basically the discharge petition is a mechanism that when a bill sits for a certain amount of time, which passed over August, they can use it to get 218 signatures, regardless of party, to force a vote. And as you know, we've seen Mike Johnson doesn't want this to be voted on, but they say right now they got 212 Democrats and 4 Republicans, so they need 2 more Republicans.
So this would be to force a vote onto a bill that would require the release of all the Epstein files with a few exceptions for victim identity and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they unveiled it with victims present at the press.
So the victims are supportive of it. That's important to say. The other thing that's happening sort of as a dual track is the Oversight Committee run by James Comer is subpoenaing the Justice Department for files. They're claiming they're going to have these interviews with law enforcement officials from the past, Republican and Democrat alike, about the case. And then last night kind of came a twist where they revealed about 30,000 or so documents, but those documents were largely rehashes. What's your sense of what's going on with the Oversight Committee's process?
So it's being helmed by James Comer, who, if you remember the various Biden investigations, manages this committee in a very freewheeling, haphazard way. Doesn't really plan things out. And it appears that over the August recess, they knew this was coming. Massie-Khanna announced this press conference weeks ago, and everyone knew the discharge petition was coming, and it looks like they didn't prepare for it. And so Comer is now releasing, these 30,000 documents, most of which were duplicates. So what it does, though, is it gives these Republicans an out to not sign the discharge petition, because they can say, we're doing our due diligence.
And is that going to be the only release, 30,000, or are they promising more?
They're promising more and more, because they're saying this is an investigation that takes time. Not that they haven't had time until this moment.
Not only that, but it's also this investigation. When you're talking about documents release, it's not like they're doing document production. The documents are there. Is this strategy working? I guess I should ask. As in, are enough Republicans at this point satiated, placated with the idea that you'd have sort of a continuous stream of releases from the Oversight Committee, and that therefore they don't need to do the Ro-Khanna Tom Massie thing?
A little bit. So there's the Republicans who just kind of like do what leadership says. And then in this case, they're saying, like, say you have faith in the Oversight Committee, they have a resolution to express continued support for what Oversight is doing. That's meant to misdirect, to give them an out, to not sign the discharge petition. There are 4 Republicans. It's Massie, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene are on this discharge petition. They need 2 more. And we haven't seen the kind of swift support that, like, if this wasn't possible to do this because of procedural maneuvers, but if they had done this in July, there would have been a lot more Republicans. There were originally 11 Republican co-sponsors of the original Massie bill.
Right. What happened to the 7?
So they are waiting and seeing. So Tim Burchett was like, I'm satisfied with this document release. I'm satisfied with what Oversight's doing. Thomas Massie claimed that the White House has been whipping to basically prevent Republicans from signing on. When I reached out to the White House last night, an official gave a statement that, this is considered a hostile act towards the administration, which is like, that's the term they use. That's code for,
why would it be hostile? Yeah, why would it be hostile unless they thought that the release would be damaging to the administration?
Yeah, so there's really no point
really incredible
of all this stuff, but it's an attempt to, like, they're doing this, and it's because it's Comer led. It just reminds me of the Biden years. They're doing it in a very haphazard way where they're just like, no, do this or don't do that.
So let me just say, Ro-Khanna at this press conference, I'm going to ask you about the press conference in a second, but Ro-Khanna in the press conference says, it's like pleading. He said, we just need 2 more signatures to force the release of these documents.
And we have 4 Republicans, courageous Republicans like Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace, who was so emotional yesterday after talking to the survivors, Congresswoman Boebert, and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. We need just 2 more signatures to force the release.
Tom Massey is out there saying it's shameful that they're calling this a hoax.
I think it's shameful that this has been called a hoax. Hopefully today we can clear that up. This is not a hoax.
They had this weird flyover. Were you there for the flyover? Like it looks like an F-35. What was that like? What was going on?
So apparently the White House was doing a flyover of jets to honor a Polish pilot that crashed recently. You have to understand that like they're so loud. And so it like deafened the entire scene for like a good 20 seconds. And then the way these fighter pilots work is like there's 4 up front and then there's one. I learned this while watching the Blue Angels a couple of years ago. There's always one hiding in the back and he's the one who's in charge. So once it was all over, another guy rips across.
Was this deliberate?
I mean, it was to honor a downed.
I know it was
pilot,
to honor. Like, I know that was deliberate, but do you think
the point is that like this Massie-Khanna press conference, like they announced this weeks ago, so they knew it was going to happen at this time.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was a long press conference. It was more than an hour, so you know.
And who was there? Tons of media were there. Were some of the victims there too?
Yeah, there were several of the victims. Each of them spoke for a little bit. One of them mentioned that Epstein had bragged to her that Donald Trump, about his close relationship with Donald Trump.
He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually.
When that happened, I looked over at Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she was just stone-faced. I think we have an image of that. You can put on the screen. And it was just like, they were very clear about this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, she did say something at the end where she was like, she responded to the hostile act comment, and she said, you know, and the hoax comments, and she said the hostile act is what has happened to these victims.
And this isn't a hostile act towards the administration. The hostile act has been against these women for so many years now. The hostile act is covering up for Jeffrey Epstein.
And so that was very strange. I've never really seen her use Trump's own word, or not Trump's words, but the White House's own words against them.
Right.
So she seems very animated about this. When she walked out, some of the protesters were flipping her off and shouting boo and stuff. But Ro Khanna was like, look, this is a big deal, like that she's here. You know, this is it's an example of bipartisanship, even if it happens once in a blue moon.
I've never done a press conference with Marjorie Taylor Greene before.
We're going to listen quickly to some of the survivors speaking out at the press conference.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not... Please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us.
I don't want to send a direct message to him. I'm already scared enough. We're not going to be silenced anymore. We will be speaking moving forward. Wherever we need to be, we will be, and we need to pass this.
President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now, and this country needs it now.
They're pleading directly to Trump. Trump, meanwhile, he's in the White House. He's meeting with this Polish leader, and he's talking about the whole issue. And he's, in basically saying it's a hoax, that it's time to move on. He was calling it a distraction, said people will never be satisfied with whatever is released.
But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. And I know that no matter what you do, it's going to keep going.
Let me push a proposition by you. They're not handling this particularly well. Like, you could just, someone, I forget, it was maybe George Conway was saying this, but like, I still am confused by it. Trump could just say, look, this is a matter for the Oversight Committee, or this is the matter for DOJ. We can't talk about it. They're in the process of producing documents. Let's move on. He could say that. That'd be like the normal way to get around this. But instead, he acts weird and guilty about it. And he's like, it's a hoax. You're just trying to hurt me. This is a hostile act. And I contend that that's like just going to be a self-inflicted wound, that this invites more scrutiny, and that it's going to keep festering a little bit for him.
He behaves like someone who is extremely guilty.
I know. And he might not be guilty. I don't know. Maybe he's not guilty. But he behaves like someone who's trying to hide something.
Yeah. And it's just really fascinating the way that this has done. Like, last night was technically the first day back in Congress, which was, a couple hours. But today has really had like first day of school vibes. And it was like we talked about earlier, like they had weeks to prepare for this. And they were just like, they've just totally messed it up. In terms of momentum.
Yeah, where does it go from here?
It depends on how frightened, and we saw a little bit of that from Tim Burchett, but it depends on how frightened these guys are of retribution again from Trump. They're being given these outs, but it also matters, and maybe this is a question for Will Sommer, is how like the online right responds.
Right.
If they're really, really bothered by this and they don't buy it, which why would they? Because they haven't up until this point. Like that continues to put the screws on a lot of these Republicans who rely heavily on the base.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess the best case scenario is that the online right basically is maybe over it, frankly. Like they cared for a couple of weeks and now they're ready to move on. But either way, if you're 2 votes short of the discharge petition, it's going to be a lot of attention to see if any lawmakers flip. And all those lawmakers are going to be asked about it. So we shall see. Joe Perticone, thank you so much for tackling this with us. Looking forward to your newsletter tomorrow where you cover this as well. For those who watch us, subscribe to the feed where you get more content and conversations like this. Talk to you soon.